12 years ago, my life took a turn I never saw coming. My ex-husband, Mark, 38 at the time, decided that being a father wasn't for him. After 5 years of marriage and 2 kids, he told me he couldn't handle the responsibilities of parenthood and wanted to focus on building his career. He said he felt trapped by family life and needed to be free to reach his full potential. It was like a gut punch. One day, I thought we were a team trying to navigate the chaos of raising a family. The next, I was a single mom with 2 kids under 5, trying to make sense of how everything fell apart. At first, I thought Mark might come around, that he was just overwhelmed by the pressures of parenthood and would eventually realize what he was leaving behind. I held on to a small, foolish hope that he'd wake up one day, see Liam and Ava's faces in his mind, and decide they were worth fighting for. But he didn't. He left without much of an explanation, barely saying goodbye. A week later, I was served with divorce papers. The swiftness of it all was shocking. One day we were a family, fractured, yes, but still together. The next, he was gone. He didn't fight for custody, not even joint custody. It was as though he didn't want the reminder of what he'd walked away from. The court ordered him to pay the bare minimum in child support, and he agreed without argument. Then, just like that, he moved to another state and cut off all contact. It was as if he wanted to erase us from his life entirely. Liam was 5 at the time, old enough to notice and ask questions. He'd come up to me with those big innocent eyes and ask, "Where did Daddy go? When is he coming back?" How do you answer that? How do you explain to a little boy that his dad chose to leave? I tried my best, telling him that Daddy had to go away for a while, but it didn't stop him from asking. He waited by the window some nights, watching the driveway, as if Mark might pull in at any moment. Ava was just 3 then, too young to understand what was happening, but not too young to feel the change. She'd wander the house, calling out for him. "Daddy, Daddy," she'd say, her little voice echoing through the quiet. It was heartbreaking. I'd scoop her up and hold her tight, but no amount of hugs filled the void he'd left behind. I was 34 at the time, and suddenly the entire weight of our little family was on my shoulders. I had a steady job, but it wasn't enough to cover everything. The child support barely made a dent in the bills. Those first few years were a blur. Every day felt like an uphill battle. I'd wake up before the sun to pack lunches, rush the kids to daycare, and head to work. After 8 exhausting hours, I'd race back to pick them up, make dinner, help with homework, and squeeze in a bedtime story before collapsing into bed myself. There were nights I barely slept, lying awake and worrying. Would I be able to pay the rent this month? Could I afford Liam's school supplies or Ava's dance class? Would my kids grow up thinking they weren't enough because their dad had left? The worry was constant, a weight that never lifted. Liam, even as a little boy, seemed to sense my struggles. He was always the quieter, more introspective one, taking on more than a child ever should. He'd do these small, sweet things to try and help. Once, when I was particularly stressed about money, he brought me the few dollars he'd saved from his allowance and held it out to me, saying, "Mom, I think you need this more than I do." It broke my heart and made me so proud of him all at once. He tried to fix things around the house with his little plastic toolkit, banging on loose cabinet doors and insisting he could take care of it. He'd keep Ava company when I was too busy, reading her picture books or helping her color. Liam carried so much weight on those small shoulders, and while I was grateful for his thoughtfulness, I worried constantly about the toll it was taking on him. Ava, on the other hand, was a firecracker. Even as a toddler, she was stubborn, full of energy, always asking questions and testing boundaries. She had this fierce determination about her, a spirit I admired and encouraged. I also saw how deeply she felt things. As she grew older, Ava started to struggle with feelings of rejection. She wouldn't talk about it directly, but the signs were there. She'd make little comments that broke my heart, like when she'd point out that her friends' dads came to their soccer games, or how Father's Day at school was her least favorite day of the year. One time she came home upset because the teacher had asked everyone to make a Father's Day card and she didn't know what to write. She tried to act like it didn't bother her, brushing it off with an "I don't care" or "whatever," but I knew better. Ava was tough. But she was just a kid, and kids need to feel loved and wanted. Mark's absence left a hole in her life, one she didn't always know how to talk about. The hardest part for me was feeling like I had to be everything at once, both mom and dad, provider and nurturer, disciplinarian and comforter. I wanted to shield them from the pain of Mark's choices, but I couldn't erase it entirely. All I could do was show them that they were enough, that they were loved beyond measure. We fell into a rhythm eventually, but it wasn't easy. Money was tight and there were plenty of sacrifices. Liam wanted to join a club in middle school, but the fees were too high, and Ava had to settle for secondhand soccer cleats because I couldn't afford new ones. Still, we found joy where we could. I worked hard to make sure the kids felt safe and happy, even when I felt like I was barely holding it together. Mark, meanwhile, seemed to be living his dream. I would hear bits and pieces through mutual friends or see things pop up on social media, like how he got promoted at work, bought a fancy condo, and was always jetting off to some new country for business. He looked happy, at least from what I could see through social media. He was living the life he had always talked about, climbing the corporate ladder, traveling the world, experiencing all the luxuries that came with success. It was the life he'd always wanted for himself. But not once did he reach out to me, not even a birthday message to his kids. No calls, no cards, no acknowledgement of their lives. At first, I tried not to be bitter. I told myself that maybe he was just busy and that maybe he was adjusting to his new life, and that one day he'd remember he had a family. But the years passed and I honestly stopped caring. The more time passed, the less I thought about him. I focused on raising Liam and Ava and on making sure that they knew they were loved and that they had everything they needed from me. Now, Liam is 20 and in his second year of college. He's studying engineering, works a part-time job, and is thriving. He's still quiet, but has grown into a thoughtful, resilient young man. Ava, now 17, is in her senior year of high school and preparing to graduate. She's as strong-willed as ever, talking about applying for so many prestigious colleges. They've both grown into incredible people despite everything. Then, out of nowhere, Mark sent me an email last week. He's 50 now and recently retired. Apparently, after selling a company he helped build, he said he's been reflecting on his choices and wants to reconnect with the kids. He mentioned setting up a trust fund for them and said he hoped it could be a way to start fresh. He claimed he wanted to make amends and hoped I could help facilitate a meeting. It was bizarre, like reading a message from a stranger. I told the kids about it because they deserved to know. Liam was indifferent, saying, He made his choices. Ava, however, was furious. She called him a stranger and said she didn't want anything to do with him. I could see the hurt behind her anger, though. It's one thing to feel abandoned, but it's another to have that person suddenly try to come back into your life as if nothing happened. I haven't replied to Mark yet. I don't even know what to say. Part of me wants to tell him exactly how much damage he caused by leaving and how his absence shaped our lives, but another part of me thinks it's pointless. What good would it do? The kids are old enough to make their own decisions, and it's clear they don't want a relationship with him right now. Still, I can't help but feel conflicted. Should I encourage them to at least hear him out? Would it be better for them to have some kind of closure? Or am I opening the door for more pain and disappointment? I'm turning to this community because I don't know what the right answer is. Have any of you been in a similar situation? How did you handle it? I don't want to make the wrong choices for my kids, and I feel like I'm walking a tightrope here. Any advice would mean the world to me. Update 1. Hi guys. I want to start by saying thank you for all the support, advice, and kind words. I didn't expect my story to resonate with so many people, and it's comforting to know I'm not alone in navigating something like this. A few of you had questions, and I'll try to answer those as I update you on what's happened since my last post. This situation has been a whirlwind, but the feedback and encouragement here have been a lifeline for me. First, let me address something a few people pointed out. Why I even considered hearing Mark out. Trust me, it wasn't because I'm a pushover or willing to forgive what he did without thought, but I'm a parent first, and if there's even a 1% chance that Mark's involvement could somehow improve my kids' futures, whether financially or emotionally, I felt I had to explore it. That said, I would never force Liam or Ava to interact with anyone, let alone the man who walked out on them. It was ultimately their decision, and I was always going to respect that. After sitting down with Liam and Ava for another conversation, this time with calmer minds, it became clear we were all on the same page. Both of them firmly decided they didn't want anything to do with Mark, not even his trust fund. They both expressed that any kind of relationship with him felt like an attempt to buy back their love, which they found insulting. Liam said, "I don't want a dime from someone who couldn't even pick up the phone on my birthdays." Ava, always fiery, added that accepting his money felt like letting him off the hook for all the years he missed. So I responded to Mark and kept it short and direct, congratulating him on his success and the sale of his company. I also told him that Liam and Ava had no interest in reconnecting with him or accepting any help, financial or otherwise. I made it clear that their decision was final and based on years of feeling abandoned. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told him as kindly as I could that while his effort to make amends might be coming from a good place now, it was too late. They had built their lives without him. They didn't feel there was a space for him in them anymore. Hitting send on that email felt more satisfying than I could put into words. Some of you suggested we take the money because after all, he owed it to us. And while the thought is tempting, I just couldn't do it. I've worked too hard, and Liam and Ava have worked too hard to let him swoop in and throw money at the life he walked away from. It's not about pride. It's about principle. I want my kids to know that we don't need anything from someone who abandoned us. The life we've built is ours, and I won't let his money put a price tag on it. Of course, Mark didn't take the rejection gracefully. He responded with another email, this time a little longer and more emotional. He talked about how he's changed and regrets the choices he made. He said he was lonely and hoped we could all start fresh. He even hinted that Liam and Ava might regret not having a relationship with him one day. Reading his words, I couldn't help but feel angry. Where was this regret when Ava was crying at night, wondering why her dad didn't love her enough to stay? Where was this newfound self-awareness when Liam was struggling with self-doubt, wondering if he wasn't good enough to keep his dad around? I didn't reply. I don't think there's anything left to say. It wasn't just the email that brought up old wounds for all of us. Over the last few days, this situation has stirred up memories I hadn't thought about in years, and I found myself remembering birthdays where the kids made wishes that their dad would come back. I thought about the time Ava wrote him a letter when she was 7, asking why he didn't love her anymore, and how I had to gently explain that we couldn't send it because we didn't even have his address. I thought about all the times I saw Liam quietly watching his friends with their dads, pretending it didn't bother him when I knew it did. For Liam and Ava, it's been a mix of emotions. Liam is mostly stoic and as usual, but I can tell this stirred up some unresolved feelings. He's kept himself busy with school and work, but there's a quietness about him this week that worries me. Ava, on the other hand, has been vocal about how this has dredged up old wounds. She said it feels like Mark is trying to rewrite history by acting like he cares now when he didn't care then. It's hard to see them go through this, but I'm proud of how they've handled it. They're so strong, even when it hurts. On a personal note, I've been reflecting a lot too. I think part of me always wondered what I'd say to Mark if he ever came back. I imagined I'd have this big moment where I'd finally get to tell him everything I'd been holding in. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. But now that the moment is here, I don't feel the need to say much at all. I think that's what growth looks like. Realizing you don't need closure from the person who hurt you to move on. A few people here shared stories about reconnecting with estranged parents, and I want to thank you for that. It's been helpful to hear different perspectives. For now, I'm focusing on supporting Liam and Ava as they navigate their feelings about this. I've also decided to start therapy for myself again. I used to go years ago, but life got busy and I let it slip. This whole situation has brought up a lot of unresolved feelings I didn't realize I still had, and I think it's time to work through them. To anyone reading this who's been in a similar situation, thank you for your advice and encouragement. This isn't easy, but it helps knowing that there are others who face these challenges and come out stronger on the other side. I'll keep you all updated if anything changes, but for now, we're focusing on healing and moving forward just like we always have. Update 2. Hello, everyone. When I last updated, I truly believed that we were done with this entire situation. Mark had reached out. I'd responded on behalf of my kids and we'd all moved on, or so I thought. Unfortunately, life had other plans and the situation escalated in ways I wasn't prepared for. Mark showed up at our house. Yes, he came unannounced, standing outside and calling out for Ava and me to open the door. Liam wasn't home at the time. He was at work, and I honestly wish Ava and I hadn't been home either. Seeing him standing there was jarring. He looked desperate, and while a big part of me wanted to ignore him, another part felt like I needed to let Ava see for herself the kind of person he was. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. The moment he stepped inside, Mark launched into a flood of excuses and justifications for his past. He claimed that everything he'd done, the years of silence, the focus on his career, the complete abandonment, was all for us. He insisted that he had left to create a better future for Liam and Ava, to give them a life of comfort and privilege. Hearing him say this was almost surreal, as if he had written history in his mind to make himself the hero of a story that didn't exist. Ava stood there, arms crossed, her face blank, but her silence spoke volumes. I could tell she wasn't buying a single word he said, and neither was I. Mark's words didn't match the reality we lived through. He didn't leave to provide for us. He left because he didn't want the responsibilities of a family. When it became clear that neither Ava nor I were responding the way he wanted, Mark changed tactics. He turned his attention to Ava, softening his tone, trying to appeal to her directly. He started talking about her future, mentioning how he could help her travel the world before she started college. He painted a picture of luxurious vacations, fully funded by him, as if that would be enough to make her forget the years of neglect. Ava didn't say anything, but her body language made it clear she wasn't interested. It was painful to watch him try to manipulate her. He clearly thought he could buy her affection or convince her with grand gestures. When none of it worked, his demeanor shifted yet again. The pleading and charm disappeared, replaced by anger and blame. He turned on me, accusing me of poisoning the kids against him. He claimed I had brainwashed them into forgetting all the things he had supposedly done for them when they were younger. Hearing him say that was infuriating. The truth is, I've never spoken ill of Mark to Liam or Ava. I didn't need to. His actions, or lack thereof, spoke for themselves. Still, standing there and listening to him twist the narrative was like a slap in the face. I wanted to say something to defend myself and set the record straight, but in the moment, I felt paralyzed. Mark didn't stop there. He went on and on, saying that I had ruined the relationship he could have had with his children. He acted as though he was the victim, completely ignoring the fact that he was the one who chose to leave. He even had the audacity to suggest that I'd made it impossible for him to come back sooner, as if that were ever a decision I had control over. Before I could respond, Liam came home. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. He walked in, immediately sensed the tension in the room, and asked what was going on. Mark tried to shift gears again, and this time turning his attention to Liam. He started talking about how proud he was of Liam's accomplishments, how he had been following his progress and knew he had a bright future ahead. He said he wanted to be part of that future, to support him in whatever way he could. Liam didn't let him finish. He simply told Mark to leave. His voice was calm but firm, and there was no room for argument. Mark tried to push back, insisting that he had a right to see his children and be part of their lives, but Liam stood his ground. He told Mark that he had lost that right the day he walked away, and nothing he could say or do now would change that. Watching Liam handle the situation with such strength and clarity made me incredibly proud. He didn't let Mark manipulate him or guilt him into anything. He just stood up for himself and for Ava in a way that I hadn't been able to in the moment. Mark left after that, but not without making one last comment. He said that one day we would all regret shutting him out and that we would realize he was only trying to help. It was classic Mark, always deflecting blame and painting himself as the victim. After he left, I sat down with Liam and Ava to process everything that had just happened. Ava was furious, saying that she couldn't believe he had the nerve to show up and expect forgiveness after everything he had done. Liam, as usual, was quieter, but I could tell he was upset too. He said it felt like Mark was trying to rewrite history, to erase the pain he caused by throwing money at the situation. The whole ordeal has been emotionally draining. It's brought up so many old wounds, not just for Liam and Ava, but for me as well. I've been reflecting a lot on the kind of life we've built since Mark left. It hasn't been easy, but it's been ours. We've faced challenges together, grown together, and become stronger because of it. Mark doesn't get to come back now and take credit for any of that. I'm still processing everything that happened, but one thing is clear. We don't need Mark, and we never did. His presence, or lack thereof, doesn't define us. We've built a life that is rich in love and resilience, and no amount of money or empty apologies can change that. Thank you to everyone who's been following the journey and offering your support. It's been a tough few days, but knowing that there are people out there who understand and care has made a world of difference. I'll keep you updated if anything else happens, but for now, we're focusing on healing and moving forward. Update 3. Hi guys, I'm back again. A few days ago, something else happened and I thought you should know. Things have finally come to a close, but it wasn't without one last dramatic encounter. Ava and I were out doing our regular grocery shopping. It was a normal day, nothing out of the ordinary, until we came across Mark. I don't know how it happened, but there he was, standing a few aisles away. I saw him before he noticed us, and for a moment I thought maybe we could just keep moving and avoid any kind of interaction. But of course, Mark spotted us, and he wasn't about to let the opportunity pass. He made a beeline for us and immediately started shouting, drawing attention to himself like always. He accused me of taking the kids away from him, asking if I was happy now that I'd succeeded in turning them against him. He was loud, angry, and completely oblivious to the fact that we were in a public place. Ava stood frozen beside me, and I could feel her tense up as Mark continued his tirade. That was my breaking point. I'd held my tongue before and let him have his say and tried to take the high road, but this time I couldn't stay silent. I turned to him and asked very clearly and loudly how exactly I had taken his kids away from him when he had been missing in action for 12 years. I asked him where he was during the birthdays, the holidays, the milestones. Where was he when Liam was struggling in school or when Ava needed someone to cheer her up at her dance recital? I reminded him that he was the one who chose to walk away, not me, and that his absence was entirely his doing. Mark didn't have an answer to any of it. He just stood there, stunned, and I let out 12 years' worth of frustration. For the first time, I wasn't holding back. I wasn't polite or measured. I was honest, and it felt good. It felt like finally closing a chapter I didn't even realize was still open. But then I noticed people starting to gather. Shoppers were stopping to watch, their carts idling as they stared at the scene Mark had created. And that's when I realized I'd said enough. I didn't need to prove anything to him or anyone else. Ava and I turned to leave, but Mark tried to follow us, still shouting something about how I'd ruined his relationship with his kids. Thankfully, a store employee stepped in. He got in between us, and Mark told him very firmly that if he took one more step, they would call the cops. Mark looked like he wanted to argue, but must have realized he had no leg to stand on. He backed off, and Ava and I left the store. On the way home, I kept replaying the encounter in my head. I just cannot describe how emotional I felt. A little bit of relief, anger, sadness, and even a bit of guilt for losing my temper in public. Ava was quiet for most of the ride, but when we got home, she told me she was proud of me for standing up to him. That meant the world to me, because all I've ever wanted is to show my kids that they deserve better than what Mark gave them. Since that day, Mark has disappeared. None of our friends or family has heard from him, and honestly, I don't care to know where he is as long as my kids and I are safe. That's all that matters. He's proven time and again that he's only interested in causing chaos, and I'm done letting him have any influence over our lives. This whole experience has reminded me of what's truly important. Liam and Ava. Liam is all grown up now, but I know this situation has impacted him deeply. He's always been the quieter one, keeping his feelings to himself, but I can see how much this has weighed on him. I'm keeping an eye on him and making sure he knows I'm here for him if he ever wants to talk. As for Ava, I can tell she's still processing everything. She's strong and independent, but she's also only 17, and this has been a lot for her to handle. I've decided to sit down with her and discuss whether she feels the need for therapy. I want her to have all the tools she needs to heal and move forward. And if talking to a professional can help, then that's exactly what we'll do. Through all of this, I've realized how important it is to focus on the life we've built together, the three of us. We don't need Mark, and we never did. Liam and Ava are incredible young adults, and I couldn't be prouder of them. We've weathered so many storms together, and each one has made us stronger. I can't thank you all enough for the support and kindness you've shown me through this journey. Sharing my story here has been cathartic in a way I didn't expect. And the advice and encouragement I've received have meant more to me than I can say. For now, I'm putting this chapter behind us and focusing on the future, a future where we are safe, happy, and free of Mark's shadow. Thank you for being here for us. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.